realize something now.
Thank you, Kanta. So, how was I? Halineva Dabuya, Nia Nithaya Prasaran, WDB, WNO Daily Broadcast ne. Budaba Chisa Chai, Kala Khele, Sanadi Pin, Kala Khele, Yogdan Bia, the Pinji, and Chokipami, Skolakar Pin, license and Kalabalaya, Yanzonzula, Budaba Patiko, Toya Jole. Thoya mu pahako tha jisa चाहिँ Shilasa Rajbhandari ju या त सदा त यो जुल work या त लस्को सिया नि हो the conversation today will be in a kind of a mixed language, mixed mode. The preferred language will be a mixed one today, so that our respected guest can as easily and comfortably put across her things about her work. So yeah, it'll be in mixed media. Good. Daklenapa, you are heartily welcomed here in the World Name Organization's daily broadcast, WDB. Shilasa Rajbhandari ju,
Namaste. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. I know that you'll probably be one of the busiest Nepali right now in Nepal, because we are aware that the one of the biggest art event in Nepal is happening now in Kathmandu, which is Kathmandu Triennale. And you must be very, very, very busy. This must be the busiest time of the year for you, busiest time out of last 3 years for you. I don't know. But thank you for accepting the invitation, and we are very, very glad and to have you here. Dakle napa chai aji chhuya thasa Shilasa Rajbhandari ju Nepaya kala khele chama chai najama kalakar chokipami juyati. She is one of the very well-known artists in art field in Nepal and abroad as well. And she's also been recently, been active as a curator, along with, I think, Hitman is another respected artist in Nepal, and both of them have been curating many wonderful, projects in Nepal and abroad. And one of the biggest thing happening in art scene in Nepal is Kathmandu Triennale. So, firstly, I think as I welcome you here. Shilasa-ji, I don't know, like, what are your expectations today from this conversation? How are you feeling about it?
I'm first of all super glad and honored to be invited here, and also like I'm also really ashamed that I cannot speak in my mother tongue. And again, it's such a political. Like if we see the reason behind like why Neva cannot speak their own mother tongue, it has such a political history. So my mother was, and both my mother and father, in fact, were trained in a way that their my grandmother and grandfather were afraid that never buy away there. And never bad saying karma, they wouldn't speak. And then I'm a third, like second generation, where we wouldn't speak. And it's such a huge cultural loss. But also in a process, now my mother is really encouraging me to speak, so we try it a little bit. But I can understand entirely. It's just and then I reflect back upon the situation our society has created, that we have lost so many of our heritage in this point.
Yeah, true actually. And this is I'm kind of trying to pin you here so that we are seen in the light. Okay, yes. So yeah, it's true. Mr. Rajbhandari is true. Whatever you just said, I kind of accept it wholeheartedly, and this has been the case with me as well. I was never taught Nepal Bhasha. during my childhood and upbringing, for the same reason that you just cited here. For the kind of language, we wanted to be very fluent in Khas Nepali, which is a state language. Whether you like it or not. I mean, and that was the very reason my parents never taught me Nepal Bhasa as well. But I think, the past has been quite, uh, quite an important accident for our culture. But of course, we can try and change the future. And let's give a try. And hats off to your mom, actually. I'm very glad that to learn that she's encouraging you. And we will try. We would like to do the same. Thank you. So, yes, what is happening in Nepal really? Because, like, as my memory takes me back to those days when there was only the annual uh, art exhibition by National Academy of Fine Arts, and then we started having another annual exhibition by Nepal Art Council, and I don't know if any other, maybe there are several others these days in Nepal. But what is it all about Kathmandu Triennale? How has it come up? And what's going on in Nepal? Please make us, please enlighten us about it.
I really have to admit that Nepali art scene is really thriving and a lot of dynamic activities is happening. A lot of artist-led initiatives, artist collective, and even individual artists are really like doing their best from whatever they can. A lot of collective efforts also happening. Little galleries and initiatives. So we are in such an interesting, thriving point. And besides the annual exhibitions by the NAFA, National Academy of Fine Art, we also have multiple exhibitions happening. And Kathmandu Triennale is one such event. And this is a periodical exhibition which happens once in a 3 year. So therefore it is Triennale. So Biennale is once in a 2 year. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
That's completely fine. We can hear you.
Okay.
That's good enough. Yeah.
Okay. Triennale's history dates back to 2009, where it was in a festival format, but it was also a periodical exhibition. It is organized by Siddhartha Art Foundation, and then they did a next edition in 2012, and then the next was in 2017. And we were supposed to have this in 2020, but the pandemic hit, and we postponed it in this year.
Yeah, good to know. Actually, things are going better in the art scene in Nepal, and it's happening. Most of the things are happening now, which is good. And more than anything, you are a part of it, which is also great to know. How is the life of a curator for an artist, turned curator? How is your life as a curator currently? Very busy, a very like loss of responsibility, loss of expectations. What's happening? Like how life is treating you as a curator currently?
I mean, even as an artist, we were collaborating and organizing smaller scale event, but this one is definitely like really big. We have and then it was a curatorial take again to make this large scale. So we have 40 representations from 40 country, 130 artists. And intentionally from indigenous community and marginalized communities. So this is something we really wanted to be conscious about, that obviously we have artists from all continents, but not the repeatedly blue chip artist or white artist. We wanted to have representation of and a solidarity of communities and artists from all across the globe, who are resisting, who are raising their voice, and who are talking about their identities. And as an artist also, and as part of a collective art in Nepal, that was something we were already doing in a smaller scale. So Art in Nepal, we have artists from 5 indigenous communities in Nepal. And Nepal is such a diverse country. And even though we do talk about indigeneity, all the indigenous community have their own specific issues. So but in terms of like shift of responsibility, there were a lot of management aspect, let's say, team handling, team building, also fundraising, but pandemic like really was the biggest challenge, I have to say.
True, actually, like everywhere else and with everything else. Um, Such a great thing, actually, just to hear that 40 different countries from around the world and 130 artists. Wow, that's a big feat. Congratulations for pulling all this together. And despite the pandemic situations, which is still, not completely out of our way. And kind of Bintana, to you and your collaborators and your project partners and everyone. Let's have a look at how this triennale looks like. Quickly, I will share, and I'll just try and show our guests. Jijan Saka Thana Kene to triennale चाहिँ गयौँ यो चाहिँ रूप गयौँ दुईटा गर्नु धासा ठ्याक्क वैकरिया शिलासा राजभण्डारी जी चाहिँ इन्स्टाग्राम पेज हो भने चाहिँ जी सका चाहिँ चिक्सार हुन्छ क्लिप जगह शेयर या ओके चाहिँ लुक एन्ड फिल गयौँ दका अलि जी खाना
Make my
Perfect. Perfect. These are talking about nothing that so am to train you say look and feel going to say swivel say to get in say that but that's idea na day. What a tremendous achievement. And look at it. Like we've just started talking about talking with Shilashaji for the last 5 minutes or less. And we are already like we find ourselves touching upon so many important issues in Nepal: ethnicity, marginalized voices, and so on. Even when we haven't actually jumped into her artworks, we already started talking about these. So this is a very rare experience. I've been carrying out conversations with so many different artists from different genre and age and various different communities, but this is quite rare. How are you achieving this? And I'm very, very interested to learn from you. What is it this all? Because like I've been to so many exhibitions, Nepal and abroad, especially when I talk about Nepal, the kind of paintings and artworks that we get to see in the exhibitions are, I think, quite different. This is quite different. This Kathmandu Triennale is different, and it is bringing the voices to the front. And I've also had this experience with most of the Nepali artists that the voices of the ethnicities and the marginalized voices, they do touch upon these things, but it is not very loud and clear. And I don't know, but they might have their own reservations and ideas. But how are you managing to bring this in such a on our faces, like literally? And how's this experience, and what is the inspiration behind this?
I think it comes from a long conversation and a long process of unlearning and a lot of research and lot of process. And Triennale is also one aspect of our longer term process. So this is neither beginning nor an end as well. It also began from our college time, when Lalit Kala is right next to Ratna Park, and then the People's Movement War was right on like its hype when we were studying, and it really was a time when people were talking about being vocally about identity and asking their space in the constitution. And what is now in Triennale actually has a lot of roots to those time when we were art students, and we couldn't find ourselves within the course of studies. We couldn't find our voices uh, mm, within the systems, and then there were like thousands of people dying. Uh, and what the I have to acknowledge that we are now in the position to be vocal because now thousands of people have died for us. And in art, yes, like art is such a tricky aspect because it has been commodified a lot through and looked through a ethnographic gaze, through a colonial gaze, but also like government of Nepal have benefited from it by packaging it in a certain way that appeals the tourist, let's say. Um, and but also again art is something besides the written language and oral histories where like knowledge it has been such an important medium to transfer the knowledge to generation, to express, to encapsulate the contemporary politics. uh, the material artists use, the symbols, the color, everything. um, and it's just in Triennale, we just want to bring forth the voices of the community who had been marginalized through the casteist gaze, through the colonial gaze, through the patriarchal structures, and not really discussed in the mainstream. But they were there. It's not that they didn't exist. They were there. They were not just acknowledged, and not just within Nepal, but from all around the world. We have artists from Amazons, Yanomami community, from Aboriginal community, from America's Navajo community, and we have like African voices. Um, and we really wanted to weave together the stories through different mediums and voices, but also timelines.
Great. I'm just kind of turning into a fan now with this kind of talks and learning more about the Triennale, and very unfortunate that I won't be able to visit in person. But yeah, I've been following all your live videos every day that is happening in all the different venues, and this is such a big event. And I can't, like, I don't know how you guys pulled it off. I mean, so many venues, so many galleries, and even the palaces turned galleries, and so many different venues, so many artists. And when I listen to all of these different artists every day in your live videos, it really shakes me up. And they are talking about all the burning issues, all the right kind of things that should be voiced in within the context of Nepal as well, and abroad. And that really makes sense. And I think this is something really different and very special that is happening in Nepal. Congratulations again. And I will encourage all our viewers as well, whoever is watching us live as well, to kind of have a look and to go to Kathmandu Triennale once and give them enough, the deserved encouragement. So before we move on to your artworks, like, kind of, we just discussed about your role as a curator. I hope you will kind of, carry on doing great work as a curator. And we will now switch to, Shilasa, the artist. So, Ms. Rajbhandari, before we move, to your works, to your artworks, I would like to quickly catch up with another kind of respected artist who is here with us, Ms. Sarita Dangal. I would like to ask, Jita Sarita Dangal Juyata, Hanibama Sarita Dangal Juyata Ji चाहिँ सुन्नुहुन्छ न दासा शिलासा राजभण्डारी या त वैका चाहिँ शैली दृष्टिकोण मलाई वैकयु चाहिँ वैकयु विचारे शिलासासँग गयौँ चाहिँ कलाकार ज्यादी वैकयु चाहिँ बाला बामला पछि त छु दुसा चाहिँ छु मिखा वो चाहिँ थन छु चाहिँ इना दिसन्दा काजी इना भन्छ न सरिता डंगल जुया त
स्वादु संयुक्त जीलाई जी के अरे वो सिलासाला जे नापासे मसु ख मलाई सिलासा जे तरिका वो सोइकोटी एनालाइस्टिक सोइ स्टाइल ओ यो चाहिँ नापासे परि जे पृथकै खण्डु वो जे यो जी नापा पहिला पहिला ख उयोपटि ज्याला चाहिँ पेन्टिङ सानो अफोइना स्कल्पचर युपटि ज्या चाहिँ खजी म छौ टाइममा चाहिँ पेपर मेसी न चाहिँ म स्कल्पचर याउपटि ज्या त चाहिँ एकदमै डयो मलाई उकेन चाहिँ म परिचा एकदमै थै किसिमपटि सृजना याउडु ज्यान वेकन चाहिँ पेपर मेसी चाहिँ वो छोरै वो कमिला नि इमुयु इमोयुपट्टि स्टोरी इमोयुपट्टि सिम्बलाइज एना चाहिँ म विभिन्न किसिमपट्टि ख त एक्सप्रेस याओ टाइमपट्टि जान र एकदमै यो ताल मलाई अहिले उया लिपा चाहिँ जी भटिजा ज्या चाहिँ लिपा भक्तपुरे वहाँ छौ प्रोजेक्टिभ जान तस्कै कम्युनिटी बेसिसमा यापट्टि जान एकदमै डिफ्रेन्ट मिडियम एकदमै न्याइबिस वहाँ चाहिँ गई किसिम या रास अनि चौबी कम्युनिटी चौबी महिला तेटा चाहिँ स्वेटर टाइपी भन्नु नि स्वेटर टाइपिङ त चाहिँ विभिन्न छुट्टै पोर्ट्रेट विभिन्न फेमस लेजेन्डरी व्यक्तित्व यो चाहिँ फेसे चाहिँ स्वेटर ठाना कायुपट्टि छि स्वेटर ठाइटेन्टु कहाँ ठाना चाहिँ अयु किसिमपट्टि कम्युनिटी बेसपट्टि प्रोजेक्ट्स त न यापट्टि न जास्वे डट तर एकदमै उयोपट्टि ज्या चाहिँ एकदमै उयो थये किसिम स्टडी थये किसिम एनालाइज एना थये किसिम चाहिँ ज्यायुपट्टि छ म नाचले जो म युवा महिला कलाकार ख सो उयोपट्टि ज्यादा एकदमै यो नापान्से यो त मलाई तर वया चाहिँ म गु उयो थयो किसिमपट्टि ठो ट्रिनाले चाहिँ क्युरेटिङ यापट्टि न एकदमै एक्जाम्पलले जुडु जी त को ट्रिनाले स्वेड हुन बौद्ध यु बाहेक बौद्ध छठा चाहिँ जी मौना नि द एकदमै तस्कै बाला तलका निमेसियो न क्युरेटर गु क्युरेटर चाहिँ झी सिलासा हिटमान बाइक ह इबिनिम मिलेजिया गु इम्स या ट्युपट्टि ख चाहिँ एकदमै बाला तल चाहिँ उखना इम्ट पर्सनली नाप्लान न धयाजी आठके ना चाहिँ नेपाली टेर चाहिँ आर्ट है चाहिँ क्यानभासेजको मखकी छिसा चाहिँ गुलिन कम्युनिटी चोबी जस्तै मिथिला आर्ट एपी महिला त जुल मखला जस्तै चित्रकारले सब फुटे छ यहाँपट्टि चित्र त जुल अयु चिजु चित्र युपट्टि जस्तै झिनापा नेवाटे छिटु नि हो जनकै वेबले जनकै वेबले चाहिँ छिसा हो सिंह चाहिँ दायाँ बायाँ चोया बिल्ला राखे हो जनकै हिलिङ जुइरहेपट्टि खयुपट्टि नास्ये चाहिँ आइपी यङ जेनेरेसन आइपी 21st सेन्चुरी मनुटेर चाहिँ एकदमै कनेक्ट या खण्ड त अब त यो चिज त मर्या हुन्नगु चिज नि मलाई अयो जनकै न हिलिङ याना चाहिँ लानाउनी रहे चिज छौ मर्या चिज चाहिँ अयुपट्टि खतन एकदमै ट्रिनाले चाहिँ विभिन्न कल्चर रिचुअल हो नापैपट्टि एथनिकपट्टि आर्टतिर चाहिँ इम्स विभिन्न थै किसिम क्युरेटिङ याना चाहिँ त्यो ट्रिनाले चाहिँ बोडु जिराउ पछि चाहिँ तस्कै यो टाल मलाई अझ न बोडेजी सोमाउन नि सोनमा नि गुलिन याउ एकदमै बाला थै नेपालले चाहिँ थयो चिज चाहिँ अझ यो के जुइमा नि ट्रिनाले 3 वर्ष छ गजको मको छिस 6 महिना वर्ष दिने अझै याफैमा ध्याजीको उत्तर प्रगति हो कामना दु सिला साइट न अले हिटमान भाइट न धन्यवाद संयुक्त भाइ
यको सुवा जी चाहिँ अनुभवमा सरिता डंगल जुया त as you've just listened to one more person beside myself, and it is just not me talking about why it is important, special, and how much we missed something like this in Kathmandu and in Nepal. So there's been another witness who has also visited different galleries, and there's only one place he hasn't visited, as you said. So yes, let us now. So after this, kind of another stamp to what I've just been trying to convince you guys, let's move on to her artworks now. So let me share this again. I'm here kind of browsing Shilasa Rajbhandari's blog, which is shilasa.blogspot.com, and it has got most of her important and recent works that we can discuss here today. So to be very honest, while living in London, I've been kind of following so many artists, and one artist who has kind of really shook me up with the kind of work she does is definitely Shilasa Rajbhandari. And let's have a look at some of her works. And many of these works could they might be a bit disturbing to some of those who are not used to this kind of art, but here it is, and I think it is a good time to start looking into these kind of issue-based and very strong works from a leading female artist from Nepal. Agony of the New Bed, 2018. This is one of my most this is something I really like talking about with Shilasa since I saw this 4 or 5 years back. Agony of the New Bed. We'll just go through some of the images, and then we'll catch up with Shilasa and learn more about the inspiration behind her work. Agony of the New Bed, 2018. Medium is imitation gold leaf, digital print on linen, cotton, textile, embroidery, thread, metal thread, glass beads, wood. Exhibited as part of a Nepal Art Now exhibition curated by Christian Schick-Gruber, late Dr. Dina Bangdel, and Shilasa Rajbhandari, 2018 Nepal Art Council. This is very strong, Shilasa. This is kind of, I can keep looking at it for some time. Another wonderful work coming up. Right, I actually wanted to zoom in to this bit. I'll try again. Yeah. Right. So we just went through some of her recent works from 2016, 18 around, and we just witnessed some of the very, very strong visuals from Nepali art scene from the last half decade or so. I've got very less words to express how moved and kind of, kind of how much these images move me. But then we will, of course, switch to, we'll catch up with Shilasa ji now. So Agony, I don't know, maybe we should start talking about these works from the oldest one, or I don't know, maybe we'll just go through quickly from the oldest one. I think it'll make more sense, because this will also let us learn about your own journey as an artist, as an emerging artist. Flipping the Right Side, 2016. Please tell us more about this show, this work.
So these series are actually a reflection. I started to sort of work on these after I started to explore and realize my own position as a woman in a society which is very patriarchal, and but also like how government itself has adopted those structures, and these I started to is based on the stories of my like grandmothers and their grandmothers who married in a really young age and had to leave the house which they were born in and leave behind their identity entirely and adopt into their husbands' houses entirely, where their childhood friends, they have to like leave behind everything, including their childhood friends, the house, everything. But then it started from there. But then these are our collaboration with young girls who are in the age, quote unquote, age about to be the age of their marriage. And then how normal child marriage still is, underage marriage still is, child marriage still is in Nepal. But we can skip through because these are the roots of the later on works that I did.
All right, yeah, sure. So this was titled "Flipping the Right Side" in 2019, right? So okay, we'll move on to your other. Wow, this is like, okay, I really wanted to ask you something. Of course, please tell us more about this project and your experience with this. I saw you working with local women. I don't know where this is. We'll probably learn about this from you. I saw you working with local women and creating a kind of piece of art, which is, which has got a lot to say and express. And these women, are they artists themselves? Like otherwise?
So this one, actually, I did it in a residency in India, where I met these two women separately, and one of them is head of a department who makes sanitary napkin in a very cheap price,
Right.
and another is a master embroidery artist, and both of them had a very similar story. And again, it reflected back to my own mother's story, who raised us as a single woman in again very patriarchal society, which is a very difficult. We had a very difficult experience, and these women, I saw my reflection of my own mother in them in a way, but in a very different setting, and they didn't knew each other. And I met them in a different circumstances, and I was like, oh my god, their stories are so similar. They're such a feminist woman. They are so empowered through the medium they're working on, and I wanted to bring their stories together as a home is, and then using the very material and medium they are empowered by. So did a embroidery of their life story on top of the sanitary napkins, which is a symbol of empowerment for herself, but also for in a larger context where the sanitary napkins and menstruation uh, is made as a symbol of shame, and how to reward that gaze from shame to empowerment was something I was thinking about.
Brilliant. So you met you met these two women in India, you said? Was it India?
Yeah.
Okay. So you met two like women in India somewhere, and one of them was a sanitary napkin, like producer. The other was an embroidery artist, and you teamed up to do this kind of artwork together and narrating their stories, their life stories, and all. Right? Okay. Interesting.
And then the work is displayed in, I didn't take it with me, so it's in the place where the sanitary napkin manufacturer is, so it's over there as a home is.
Right.
I generally don't take the work. If it's a community-based work, I don't keep it with myself. I take it for exhibitions, but then I return back the work.
Nice. So what inspires you for this kind of community-based art project where you meet new people, listen to new stories, and then you guys team up and come up with a piece of art? Like how does this work?
I think it's also sort of decolonizing the way we think art in a way, but obviously I was not thinking in that way when I was doing it, but this was in 2016. But now that I reflect back on it, I think the way art has been presented is also has a lot of colonial hangovers and baggages of how master artist of solo hero artist in a way, who is so different from the society, is almost like a hermit, and which has it, like art has a different variation, but one of the very common production of art and understanding of art is very based in the community. It comes from a collective roots. So I think that is something I still try for, look for, and a lot of my practices, even not in the art, is very collective in its nature. Like for example, the Triennale we're doing, it's like 3 of us, it's just not me. So I beyond the art making and production, it's something I want to apply in my own life and work as well.
Nice. Yeah, I think I got my answer pretty much in the beginning when you said unlike a single hero celebrated artist presenting his or her work, this is like you're disappearing as an artist in the narrative and in the collaborative achievement as an artist or artists. And yeah, that really works for me as well. It really it's kind of inspiring, really, the project in itself. And yeah, it does make sense that besides the fact that you could also stay inside confines of the 4 walls of a studio and keep producing your artwork, you decided to immerse yourself into this kind of new community and geography and society, and came up with something like this. Brilliant.
But it's attempt. Everything has its own pros and cons and everything, but it's an attempt that I started or to be honest, very not being conscious about it, with an instinct, and now in this point being conscious at that then being.
I think we are making you more conscious now, but yeah, what a great instinctive decision to kind of get something like this out of your kind of liking of doing it. Great. Let's move on. So I understand this work better now. So don't take it in any other way, because I really enjoy talking to you now. If the kids are shouting in the background, if you're in a closed in a dark room, that doesn't really matter at all, because we are Sanyukta and Shilasa are talking, and what happened in the background is just part of history. That's it. For me, basically it'll be quite memorable. Let's move on with these other works. And Wow, this another great moving work, and this is such a great photograph to see them smiling and looking at maybe their own pictures or others, and in a very traditional kind of very a feminine kind of this weaving kind of medium that we have. And look at you again, working with community, other women, and interactive and growing maybe with them. Yeah. So this is Weaving the Stories of My Heart, 2016. Sheep wool, raw thread, corrugated metal sheet, found woods, golden frame. Shilasa Rajbhandari in collaboration with Urmila Khaizu, Bina Khozu, Kesari Suwal, Sapana Basukala, Juneli Basukala, Unita Kasula, Rabina Kozu, Saru Basukala, Ani Khaizu, Rabita Thapa. Brilliant. As I read these names alongside your name as a collaborators of the artists that we know, it is such a pleasant thing to do, kind of to know them, new people, new names, and like otherwise I don't know them. I haven't seen these names anywhere else, and I see them in the same line with you, and and talking about your art is great. It's really great, actually. Let's talk about your inspirations behind this work. Could you please share something about this?
I mean, this one, it just came, it was just part of a long process and relationship I built very organically with a group of women, which started with Kesari Didi, which was meeting over there, which is a part of a larger community art project we did after earthquake in Bhaktapur, a place called Thulubiasi, where one of our artist friend lived, and his house had collapsed, and it started actually from us not being able to connect with him in the initial phases of the earthquake, and we went there in person to see if we could be of any help, because we were fine at our end. And then we connected with the community, and then we started the communication, and very, very organically, and then and then they said, like, okay, the kids were kind of being anxious because of the traumas they're feeling, because of the death they're seeing. So we started to work with the kids, and we were like, oh my god, what can we do as an artist in the time of crisis? Like, what possibly can we do? And we're like, okay, we know a little bit of art, and maybe we can do something, we can help people, because we do that when we are traumatized, or we are not feeling, at least I do that. Like, art is a medium where I can express my anxieties. So maybe we just, it was an experimentation of maybe it could have worked or not. So it started like that, and around for 3 months, which according to the psychotherapist also is a window period where to have anxiety and trauma is very natural after facing a large disasters. And then through that time, I realized that it was not the kids who were the most traumatized, but it's the women in the society who were suffocating the most, because most of them were house-based worker, and their house and the community was everything for them. Because this kids started to went to schools, and other men started to do their job and continue their life, but then for the woman, like, the life as they had known it had collapsed. It had changed forever. The entire community was down. And then I started to sort of do little like stay, and just this talking would be even therapeutic to me as well, us as well, because we were also traumatized. We were just finding ways to heal each other. And then later I came to know that because Thulubiasi is situated next to the industrial area in Bhaktapur, so they do a lot of meetings and they sell it. And then because of the proximity, what happened is, like, in comparison to other parts of Bhaktapur, the women in Thulubiasi could actually without having to depend on the external transportation. They could just easily walk because it's nearby, and then do their business. So most of the women there were like house-based worker, and they would knit and then they would sell. uh, but also actually, in fact, for many, not all, but for many of them, knitting was also such a therapeutic way of expressing your emotion. And obviously it is not discussed and understandable in a very conscious way, but then when we started to do it, we realized that for example, with this larger work, when we were discussing about the colors, so it's based on an experience Kesari had, where everything was just like it was earthquake and everybody was running around, things were collapsing and it was so chaotic. People she knew was like bleeding, like children's were running around crying, dust everywhere, and she had nowhere to go. And she just looked up on the sky, and that sky was only patch of hope and stability to her. And I just we talked about it, and we wanted to recreate that patch of hope. But then when we were doing it together, and Kesari was knitting one of the blue colors, she said like she felt some sort of relief while looking at the blue and knitting it as well. And obviously, like I said, it's not for everybody it was not the same, but for some of them was and for me also, actually, knitting and sewing can give me some sort of like relief in a way. It is I don't like cooking at all, but these things is something like calms me down as well. And I have a lot of other friends also who have a similar feeling, where when we were, in fact, when we were like we were in lockdown, like some of my friends were like knitting and sewing, and it was calming us down. And I kind of, this is also one of the first time I realized, because I did my master in fine art, and it was pretty much studio based practices, and this was one of the first time I was like, because of the situation, earthquake, and like I was outside of in the like community, really in conversation to multiple people. And I started to realize like how powerful the medium of art can be. And I had never realized that before. And the way it was calming all of us down collectively, I was like, oh my, this is really powerful. uh, um, Again, and because we were in that situation, and it was extreme. And
Did you
we
want to say? Did you want to say something about the colors and the patches? Or did I miss it?
the color is, yeah, the representation of the blue, the sky,
Oh, okay,
which
right.
had come down.
So this picture, this photograph is not just a very artistic setup to showcase some works of art, because like this whole setup looked like a very artistic, kind of presentation. And I thought like, okay, wow, this is very artistic. And look at the golden frames, very ornate, and like the interior created with these bricks and plastic tins and this tin, galvanized tins and all that. So this is kind of the real thing. This is like the aftermath of the earthquake.
Yeah. So this is the very room where we were doing the workshops. We were staying, and this is actually a temporary structure,
Right.
where like Binama, like many of the women was also living over there.
Okay, great.
In the daytime, it would convert into a workshop area, and we would like sit and gather and talk. But also, yeah, the golden frame is something which was very intentional from my end, because we were talking, and then like again, talking about the patriarchal structure, and it becomes very difficult to talk about it, because what happens is you're talking about your own fathers, you're talking about your own brothers and husbands, and it is so personal, and it becomes very difficult to talk about it. But it is there, obviously it's there, the power structure is there, and personal is political. And then I realized that how, obviously in my own houses also, with all due respect, like stories of the men becomes more important than the women's, and it's like obvious, like the how lineages works, right? Like how and it's again connected to my other works, like how women have to leave their houses, and the sense of non-belongingness, and how they cannot inherit the properties, and since they cannot inherit the property, son inherits the property, and son becomes the more important, precious person in the family than daughters, and it's all interconnected. And then like how, again back to how women in the families are less valued less than the sons, right? And then the portrait was a very intentional decision, and again when we talked among my collaborators, and we decided, okay, let's make self portraits. And then so I graphed it, and so it's not easy, because it's like you have to count each and every dots, so it's like pixelated form. So I made a graph, and then we had to count each and every like dots, like the pixels, and then we ended up making the self portraits, and to value and to visualize the struggles and the woman in the family. And if you also see the history of portraits, we don't see much portraits of the woman. It's just powerful men's, and these powerful men's portraits are framed by golden frames. So I wanted to sort of reward that and give that golden frames.
Exactly.
And then this was the first place when it was exhibited in the community, but it was also exhibited later on in different place, and now it's back to the woman's own houses.
Wow, look at it. Thank you so much for doing this and also informing us about this project. Wonderful work, very ornate, heavily ornated golden frames, framing ordinary women faces. This is just great. Thank you so much, Shilasa, for doing this. This is very moving, very strong, and such a loving work. Okay, we'll now move on to another very powerful thing. When I saw this image for the first time, I was like, oh my God, this is really great work. I really appreciate this kind of work, Shilasa. And let's go through this once again. This image, this is kind of close up of this image. Ghar, strike through, mighty. The Line of Fate 2016 digital print on canvas, embroidery thread. Exhibited in, this is from 2016, right? And this is exhibited in Gallery MMB Mumbai and Taragon Museum Kathmandu. Tell us something about this great work, Shilasa, The Line of Fate.
So this is so it was 2015 and 16. I got married myself, and again, with all the due respect to my family and everybody, they're super supportive, but what I found is the fault in the system itself, not in the individuals, and the system is faulty, and our government follows that system, which includes like the property rights to Nagrita's citizenship rights. Like it's still very difficult to get citizenship through mother, and then whole preference to a son over a daughter then creates this whole power dynamics where sons are more preferred and given values, right? And then so this is especially, this work is a series from Mary's migration, where when after I talked with, so it was also age like a lot of my own friends were getting married, and everybody going through a similar crisis of non-belongingness more than anything else. Then the main question was, what is home? is the home for a woman where she's born and she thinks all her life that this is yours. You belong to this. I am part of this family. And all of a sudden, the day after you get married, it becomes Maiti. But in Nevavasa, actually is very interesting because it becomes thought. And
Interesting.
I really love it.
Okay, like your house, right?
Yeah. I the best thing about the language in Nevavas, and you should really like talk more about it. It becomes thought, right? But in like common understand. But even though, and again, different ethnic community have their own process of marriage and everything. But even though like technically it's thought, but the non-belongingness is there where you become part of a different guti, you become part of a different ajudya, everything. So that obviously that non-belongingness is there. Even though a lot of people argue that Neva community still has a lot of connection after marriage, and which I agree to 100%. But I think it's getting, but I think it's not a point to be proud of, where there are still a lot of differences, and it cannot be undermined. And then also the fact that the non-belongingness, again coming back to it, and where is your house is something. It becomes such a torturous question then when people ask where is your house, then like, oh my god, especially like in like earlier years of the marriage. And this is something a lot of my own like friends went through. And for people who don't want to get married, again becomes problematic. Why aren't you getting married? It's time for you to get married. Things like that. For people who don't want to have babies, also becomes problematic. Yeah. So this is this work is comes from that conflict in the earlier age of marriage in a woman's life, based on my experience, but also a lot of my close friends dilemmas to how to question that answer of where is your home.
True. Did you often face this question of when you were getting married, before you actually got married? What was your experience like as an unmarried woman of your age?
I mean, there are like societal norms, which just becomes more like bigger than the individual's comfort.
True.
And also beyond individual, what is the structural problem is the question we should like good, because this is such a personal experiences and it differs person to person. And again, like I said, it becomes difficult to talk about when you're talking about your own family, your own partner, your own, it becomes very problematic. But if we see beyond that personal relationship as a structural problem, and then it becomes easier to communicate. Then you go beyond like personal fights.
True, very true. And that's probably what we see as some of the true inspirations for you to kind of express yourself through your artworks, I believe. So yeah, let's move on. This is wonderful work, Shilasa, once again. We'll move on to this one. Okay. So as I said earlier, when I first saw this picture of your exhibition, when you lined up a good number of beds and wrote something in Devanagari over it, some symbols and images, Bhaktal and stuff like that, on various ordinary faces of women, this was very, very strong art statement for me. And I really wanted to talk to you about this since then. Agony of the New Bed. So what is this about agony and bed and a new bed? The equation between the agony and the new bed, we would like to know from you first.
So new bed symbolically, I wanted to say marries. And then this is about, again, the structural problem that I just expressed, but also a lot of real life consequences women have to go through because of that structural indifferences. And one of it is also, like, let's say, marital rapes. And then when you don't have power, you, because like Buharis are the least powerful member in the family, right? And it's not about men versus women. Again, it's about the structure and who is in that hierarchy. And when you're least powerful, when you on top of it marry in a younger age, and you're still discovering yourself, you don't have confidence about yourself, you get married, you go to another person's house altogether, leaving your own identity, you adopt another person's family name, and it's forcefully, even though you want you or not, you don't have property in your name, you have to depend on other person's like you are entirely dependent, and on, so you're already very, very vulnerable. And then you're not in a position to counter any kind of violence against you, any kind of abuse, any kind of not just like very violent physical abuses, but also like simple abuses as well. Then you are in such a vulnerable position, right? And how can you counter? So the golden threads symbolizes, if you can go to the earlier slides, or early
okay, this one.
It's like, yeah, so golden bed and golden thread is a symbol of like how marriages are taken in our society, like how it's celebrated with gold, with parties, with dress and this, that, and it looks glamorous, it's sparkly. But for the people who are going through it, it's painful. The reason embroidery is on top of it is the faces is because their identity have been erased or are mutated in a way, and these are made in communication with the individual whose photos I have placed. Yeah, and the little beds are symbols of the glamour, the marriage, and the hidden pain behind it. And I'm actually, in fact, against the marriage as an institution itself, because the institution itself is built in a very patriarchal structure, and there might be a more fluid and flexible ways where people can coexist with each other. Yeah, so this is,
yeah, I think we got your message bang on. Thank you, Shilasha. What a powerful work, really. I don't get tired of appreciating these really nice works. Before your explanation of these things, it had certain meaning, and after your explanation, it kind of just elevated the respect for your work. The golden threads, the miniature beds, the embroidered faces, golden, the sparkly presentation and all that, and a good number of them showing the whole system, I guess. It is really powerful. Thank you so much. Yeah, the other day I was listening to one traditional poet, actually, a very contemporary poet, and this guy said, pretty much in line of what you've been discussing, like every woman, they get asked, like, when you get married, when you're having kids, if you're not doing one of these things, like when and why not, if you have a problem, it becomes the whole society's problem, and she's got to face that every now and then, and life is miserable after that. And you took it from the personal level battle to a social structure question, and your works definitely address that issue, that question, and tries to kind of search the answer, and kind of, I think it pulls all of us in the work and collaboratively to try and answer the question which is not answered. So the other thing, I was remembering, this guy was saying, a society where women are worshipped, as Devi, is always a very is never a progressive society. It's a failure. And I kind of agree. I don't know about you, but and also about our audience. We always talk about structure, and we also say like, oh my God, this is our society. In our society, women are like deities. They are gods and devis. And this guy was saying like, any society where women are devis, that society is it's got different things to offer actually. Underneath, and in a way is very true, because the moment the woman becomes a mother, she becomes a devi. But what about the day before she gave birth to the to the newborn? She was not devi, right? And she becomes a devi because of her son, and because now she's a mother of a male, maybe, and that some child, so she becomes devi and not otherwise. And also this guy added like, very interestingly, we give that stature of a devi, of a god, to women because we do not want to give them human rights. And I mean, I didn't mean to laugh at it, but true, it is true, and it really makes sense to me. But anyway, I just wanted to wrap up this conversation with something I heard last week, and interesting and true. Wow, this work, Agony of the New Bed. Now I understand the relationship between agony and the new bed. Right. Okay. Thank you, Shilasa. And I think we will now finally jump onto the other work that you actually wanted to share with us, but I was kind of sorry to take you through your older works. But yeah, let's talk a bit about your recent works. I still see that same old house of ours in my dreams. 2017, Kathmandu Triennale. 2017 at Nepal Art Council. Right. So please tell us. Maybe we'll just go through these pictures quickly, and then you could share your ideas about behind these works.
I think I'll just like quickly, I'll not take a lot of time anymore,
Sure,
but
sure.
yeah, I think like so that was 2016, and then in 2017, then I started to think about, like, after going through and expressing like my trauma through art, I started to also again like start to think about how can we acknowledge the women in our families, and how can we like empower at least. And then I started to talk with my grandmother, and I still see that same old house of ours in my dream is based on it's something my grandmother said. Chinya Devi, we called her Chinai for some reason, which means Chi Nani actually. But even I called my grandmother Chinai, like, for some reason. I called her Sanu Nani, I don't know. Like, it was just like tradition in my family.
She's the one in the picture, right? In that photo down there?
Yes.
Okay.
And
right.
so so it's based on the conversation I had with her and her experience of Kathmandu city and how she perceives the changing locality and neighborhood, how Kathmandu turned into a metropolitan from a small neighborhood. But it was urban space to begin with, but it was a much closely knitted neighborhoods, and where everybody would know everybody. And then suddenly to her became such an alien space where especially after recent like changes of modernization and centralization, and what does it mean to a person who's living in the city, and through a feminine angle where like how does he sees these changes of politics, of different regimes, how does a woman look at it. So I was interested in that. So again, digging into my own personal history, but also trying to understand a larger history of Kathmandu, of Nepal, as where Kathmandu was one of the important center of trans-Himalayan trade route, and all these like woven narratives, where my grandmother, grandmother's maternal house is in Botaiti, was in Botaiti next to Asan, and what does it mean to her to grow up in that space. So all these works are based on the conversation I had with her, and I also and so I still see that old house of ours in my dream is so our house, which the house which her grandmother actually in fact bought at Botaiti, my grandmother's grandmother,
Right.
took some loan and then bought some land, bought a house in Botaiti. Apparently, such a feminist history, which I never knew about. And so I learned about it. And then, so that is also a house where I'm the last generation where I got chance to grow up and not be nurtured in that house. And after that, because everybody in the neighborhood was moving out, and it just started to become this business hub. And it was also difficult for our family to live there. And now and then it was demolished, and then a concrete house was built, where a shopping complex is now rented. And but in my dream, and also in my grandmother's dream when she was alive, she would always see the older house in her dream and never the new one. So it's about this very, very emotional connection where it's very, for her mind and body and emotion, like it was very difficult for her to accept the newer change. And I feel very bad and sad, like very, very sad for her. And also the fact that she got married to a different place again, and then she could not really connect with her childhood friends. And in the narration, I also kind of bring it up, while her brothers, who like kept on living until his old age and be connected with his friends forever, like she got disconnected to her childhood. And even though she's like old, she kept on referring back to her childhood days where she used to play with her friends, who everybody got married into different places of Kathmandu, Patan, and Bhaktapur. She got married in Bhaktapur, a very far city, so it was very difficult to come. And so these little objects you can see are bharakutis that I recreated out of her memory.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, so it's which refers to the time when she used to be happy with her friends and families.
So this is about your grandmother, who is Chinia Devi Pradhan Bijukshe, right? And the house she used to see in her dreams and all, and where also you grew up as the last generation. The house was bought. You're telling me the house was bought by your great grandmother?
Yes.
Like literally a female, a woman, but buying a house in Kathmandu, in the heart of Kathmandu, in Botaiti, unimaginable. And what a history, you know. Wow. I mean, this house deserves to stay in the dreams of all of you, of course. And this is I think, the dissociation. And I mean, I will never be able to feel this as realistically as you guys do, being a male, and can't be mansplaining it any further. But you know, like I left Nepal. I left my house in Kathmandu some 18 years back, and I'm living in London for the last almost two decades. Every single day, I see in my dreams the same old house. I cannot imagine my parents and my family in a new house. And whenever I go back to Kathmandu, I realize like, oh yes, we don't live in that house anymore. We've actually moved. But that visual memory is so strong for the 2 decades of time is not going to wash it off. But yeah, I mean, this is great, and I really relate to your work as well from my perspective, which is just a small set of the whole narrative that you're presenting here. I still see that same old house of our dreams of ours in my dreams. Brilliant. I'll just go through some of the images, and please let us know more about this work. Nice. It is so interesting how the household objects, become like a family to us, and you kind of grow that love and affection to your tables and chairs that your parents used to, like feed you or things like that. It just becomes your part of your life, right? Yeah, one very famous poet has said, like, you can leave a house, but the house is going to wait for you. The house doesn't leave you.
Yeah.
Look at this. Oh, nice. Interesting.
And the archival photos from my family's archive, and some of them from the internet, paired with the narrative my grandmother had.
So World Neva Organization is a network of, we are an organization which kind of brings together all the Nevars and friends of Nevars. We're not just racist type. We are kind of all those individuals or even aliens, who kind of have a goodwill or a friendliness towards the culture of the valley. We are concerned about them, and this conversation will be watched by all our members and followers worldwide. Most of them, which I wanted to add, are going to be from outside Nepal as well, right? And this work is going to really relate to them, and maybe make them drop a few drops of tears. I don't know, I'm already feeling so emotional looking at these. And how does it, my question before you even started this would be, oh, you look at that traditional frame and all that. My question, a quick question for you would be, how does it feel to kind of, and how I don't know how ethical, I mean to say, how emotionally it is like bearing yourself and your family history with your archival photos and objects of family, and putting them on the gallery or to kind of on a public display, right? I mean, I haven't done it, so I just wanted to inquire, kind of, how does it work, for you, before and after the exhibition? Do you feel like a little of yourself has been kind of public, handed over to unknown viewers? How does it feel and how does it work? Can you tell us something about that?
I mean, like I did it with my grandmother's consent, whose story I was telling, and then I think like it's really important that when we talk about history, it's just not coming from a third person's perspective. It's not just written by a person who is in power and just wants the future generation to know what they want only. But there should be like multiple, not just mine, but like multiple histories which had been not valued, and especially when I'm thinking from a feminist perspective. And again, I discovered a lot of the feminist stories in my family only after talking with my grandmother, which was very not that talked much or acknowledged much. And I think it's important that we have in even a larger context to understand and appreciate these women who did not necessarily come in the streets, but like brought change within their house, being such a uh, like clear persuasive in their own families. And I owe a lot of things to my grandmothers, that in this point I can at least draw inspiration to. I mean, whoever I am today have roots to the fights they did back then. And I imagine that might be really difficult, because like what happened, like my great grandmother, like her husband, which is my great grandfather, had a fight because she bought that house, and he broke her arm
Oh, for buying that house.
for buying that house without his like consent, for being a
Right.
free-willed woman. So yeah, I think it's a home miss, but again, I did
No,
it with my mother's
yeah,
consent.
I get you now. No, I was not asking about the consent, but literally the feeling of, sharing a part of yourself and making it public. But I get you now. I think it is more clear, and I've got my answer as well. When you said about, when you shared us about the incident when of a broken arm by the male member of the family, by your husband, for buying a house. And that that line from history of women in Nepal is kind of yeah, you should share it. And what, what other ways to kind of share it as a work of art. Are you going to tell me next that these shawls, these ga or whatever, I'm not very good at women kind of this thing, but apologize for that. Are these shawls of your grandmother?
So this is very similar to my grandmother,
Right.
but I didn't want to use the original one, so I just went to the Indrachok area where she got her original ones, and
Right.
very similar pattern.
But that does make sense, because this is like, you're not telling the story of your grandmother only. You kind of she's representing the women from that part of the world and that part of time in history, or maybe even now. But that, yeah, I think I get you. Yeah, it is pretty much your grandmother's, or anyone's grandmother, or it even takes us to the kind of structural question that you were trying to address. Yeah, it does make sense. Really.
Yeah, my grandma just becomes a portal, like a point
True.
where we depart and talk about a larger histories, shared histories, and also structural problems.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to this work as the last thing today. But do you want to add anything to these? Because I think I interrupted you much out of my curiosity, and I apologize for that. Do you want to add anything to this? And then we'll move on to the next, the shawl thing.
No, this is just a continuation of this work, and then I did this one later. So this is actually going to be exhibited at Melbourne now, which I'm very glad, because this is going to be exhibited with other South Asian women who uses photographs as their mediums of expressions. Again, through a very, like, all the women artists are working in a feminist angle. So I'm glad to be part of that larger discussion as well. But this is a continuation of the work, with the previous work.
I have a question for you, Shilasa, if you allow me to ask. So we just talked a lot about, most of our conversation has been revolving around feminism and also structural questions and all that that deserve the kind of discussion that I always wanted to have with every other artist. What is it about feminism? Like, is it the sole property of the female gender, or even males can be feminist as well? That's a very silly question, probably, but
of course, and there's so much of misunderstanding around it. And I think the misunderstanding is also like it's created strategically in a way, because what we are trying to address and what I've been trying to say is the structural, like, hierarchy and problem, where the men also, if you see, are becomes victim of that structure. It's not about man and woman or fluid gender or like gender or sexuality. It's about the structure and who who benefits from it and who are marginalized by it. Uh, and then feminism is just not about men and women. Feminism also questions women who adopts patriarchal values. Feminism also questions those women, right?
Yeah, and that's the kind of question that pretty much everyone should be asking, right? As a
Yeah.
responsible society, or whatever you'd like to call it, Nice. Thank you, Shilasa. And maybe this will be the last word we'll be discussing before we switch to our guests and let us ask them questions. So Purna Kumari Vaidya, 1890, Chiniya Bijakse, 1940, Shilasa Rajbhandari, 1988. So tell us what is going on here.
So this is again a branch of work I started like before, and this is a representation of 5 generation of my family, matrilineal family, me, my grandmother, and her grandmother. And it's a miracle that I don't know how we got her photo. My great grandmothers, but this one is it's little bit different from the line of work, even though it's connected. So it's about like how you're trying to um, tell the story of the changing garmenting and textile culture uh, through the communication of the woman in my family and the textile. So you can see the textile I am wearing has a lot of tags, which I collected from 100 different people from the dress they were wearing, and also some of them I bought from the shop.
Right.
And it's basically talking about um, the kind of culture we are in, and reflecting back on the past basis, on the basis of the photo of my great grandmother. I actually recreated the shawl. The shawl is also called Damakumari Ga or Nokali Daka.
Right.
So I recreated it, the block print. I made 2 of them. I asked my grandmother to do a performative photography for me, and I also did it. And then we tried to make it as similar as my great grandmother Purnaji. And then if you see the zoom of the middle one, my grandmother, then you can see like how textile culture was slightly changing, how there are tags from like made in India and some tag made in China, where polyester was starting to come in Nepal. And this is also again because she was living in Botaiti and Osan. So she was kind of exposed to the latest trends at that time in a way. So whatever comes in Nepal, like that would come in Assam. Um, um, but I have to say, like the Damar Kumar shawl was also in my great grandmother's time, was a fashion statement apparently. And so I was also interested in how, in a very patriarchal structure, women would find ways to express themselves and make a statement through a textile beat. And in my time, I was like, I collected tags from around 100 people, and around only 4 of it was made in Nepal. And also most of them were counterfeited, fake brands. And I was also like how our connection with textile, which is the closest thing to our body, has also changed within the time. um so yeah.
I don't know. I mean, to see these 3 portraits in one frame for me it is powerful. For me, it's a statement. For me, there is a lot that we can talk about within these 3 images. I mean, this is art, and why it is and how it is open to discussion. You have done your bit. You have explained to some extent. By the way, you didn't ask me this question, like, am I allowed to eat in this interview? And I didn't mean to say, how dare you did that. But what I mean to say was, wow, I'm now talking to a true artist who doesn't really care about, the rules of the new place you are in. And as a very true feminist and a very true artist, she just goes her way. And I really respect that, and wonderful, and having a wonderful time talking to you, Shilasa.
I'm actually in a restaurant, and that's why I'm in
oh, you have to have something, otherwise they'll kick you out. No.
Yeah, but also it's time for them to close, actually.
Yes, sure. We'll definitely close this as well. I've been criticized a lot about dragging things with artists for too long, and beyond what is practically acceptable. But yeah, this is great, and thank you, Shilasa. Now I will kind of let the floor open. And interestingly, all the artists who actually joined earlier have now all disappeared because it's been too long. I will hence, we did have a very good kind of reception through a number of well-known artists actually among us today, but it's been too late. Apologize for that again. If any member of the audience would like to ask any question to Shilasa Rajbhandari, this is the time.